You're listening to the Sanditon Chronicles, where we talk all things Sanditon and Sanditon adjacent. Come along with us as we dissect all of your favorite characters, scenes, and dialogue. We have so much to tell you.
That's why I'm mad at Jack Fox not Jack Fox, at Edward. Not mad at Jack Fox. Jack Fox is doing great.
But he is very good at playing a devious person.
Well, the thing is, so far this season, he's made me completely separate him from what he did to Esther. Like, I have to keep physically reminding myself, no, he did that to Esther. Stop liking him. Stop thinking he's charming. He did that to Esther. And that's why I'm mad, because he's making me forget. Like, even when he's trying to cheat this system that Lady Denham and the Reverend Hankins has for him, because that scene where it's the very first scene we see him in, when he's just rolling the rake on his hands, doing absolutely no work at all, jumps up to do work and immediately says, but I'd like to go write it on paper, and then gets out of doing the rest of the work when he already wasn't doing any work.
Right. He wants to write a meditation in the form of poetry.
Yes.
And it's so funny because, I mean, it just cracks me up because Reverend Hankins is all about, oh, I've just reformed you so much, and it's all he's so busy patting himself on the back.
That line that he says to his sister when he says, she compliments him on that. He's like, I have done a great job, but I'm sure, the Lord is probably in there somewhere too. Like,
yeah. Well, we'll find out. Hard for me to believe that he's done any reforming.
Yes, but he's literally taking every ounce of credit and then saying, well, maybe God is second to me. Like, dude, you're a reverend. That's really not supposed to be your mental position on this subject.
Tells you something about his reason for being, but yeah.
And I've actually, throughout season 1 and season 2, I've liked Reverend Hankins, not because I think he's a good preacher, because he's clearly not. That's never been his specialty. Oh. But he's made me laugh in the first 2 seasons.
Right.
This season so far, all he's done is irritate me.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like him.
He's yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
It's because of how he's treating Beatrice.
Well, right, because, I mean, he just treats her like, but she is skillful at getting around it. It's like, oh, I've got a letter from London. I can't imagine, that's unexpected. Yeah, right. Okay. Well, isn't Dr. Fuchs in London? Well, yes, but I don't know why he'd be writing me, but she's great. But she distracts him when he wants her to read that letter. Yeah. And she says, oh, you're doing such a good job with Edward, which is what you were referring to, with Sir Edward, of course. She's always very proper, But the other thing I was going to say, when you're talking about Edward and Augusta, I loved when he came up to her and was telling about how he really wants her indulgence to read a poem of his that he hasn't yet written. Mm-hmm. And he says, she says that about something that's dear to him. And she says, dear to you, would that be money or a position? She knows what he's all about. And then he says, she says, but I know you like poetry. And she says, I am a lover of good poetry. Yes, but I'm sure yours will be mawkish, sentimental, and without heart. Great lines this girl has.
So great.
Throughout, especially with him.
Yeah.
Throughout this whole series.
Well, we even see her with Lydia Montrose. She has great lines with her too, and great lines with Leo. So she's got. We liked Augusta in season 2. We love her even more now in season 3. Yeah, because she's really come into her own and she knows what she values. And with Edward, I think and we can see when he shows up on horseback, and she says, "Do you think me a fool? I know why you're here. You heard of my inheritance, and that's what you're after. Yeah. So again, I ask, do you think me a fool?" And then he tells her, she tells him to stop his piteous flirtations. And I like when he goes, piteous? Yes, it means deserving of pity.
Yeah.
But when she said, so she's very clear that I know why you're doing this. However, when he's walking away, she looks up at him and she makes sure that he sees her smile at him. So she knows what he is, but she's enjoying this flirtation. She's enjoying having a man who has a title, who is very good looking, pay her mind and seek her out.
Yeah, and I don't think it matters to her that he has a title, but
it makes her feel good, I think.
Right. And when he's an older man, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is that it's not somebody that her uncle has brought to her.
Yeah.
That's probably the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Because it's, so forbidden, as it were.
Absolutely.
Clandestine.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, Samuel picks up on that, though. Samuel knows what's going on.
And I like that he keeps it a secret from Alexander.
No, he keeps her he doesn't, he just, in fact, he just encourages Alexander that he should let her make her own choices.
Mm-hmm. But then Alexander, of course, says to him, you're not one to, so we get a little clue there because he says, you're not one to lecture on duty. And
yes,
he concedes
exactly.
to that. So I'm leaning more towards that he essentially abdicated from taking responsibility.
Yes.
For
I'm sure that's what happened.
The land
and he left Alexander holding the bag, having to take care of it.
Yeah.
And, so it was a big deal that he went. And I love the way that Samuel picks up on the fact that when he says to Alexander, or Xander as he calls him, when he says to Xander that you must really think a lot of this young lady to swallow your pride to seek me out.
Yeah.
And that's not the exact wording, but and and he says, well, Miss Hayward was just a former employee, that's all.
Nothing more.
And he's like, I was speaking about Miss Lamb.
And then Xander's awkward transition when Augusta came in the room, it was so abrupt that he knew instantly he was caught out. And then I like watching Samuel figure things out. And I think that's his quality he has in mind with Edward, almost, that Edward watches people very closely and he seeks, but Edward does it to find their weakness. And I don't think that's Samuel's intent. I think Samuel does it because he truly enjoys the act of figuring people out and finding their motives, especially as a lawyer. That's an asset. He can find out what their motive is just by watching them and being careful to listen to the exact wording and their body language and all that. And that's why he picked up on what Augusta was doing, because he saw her get that letter at her excitement. And even the way she was holding it behind her back and then immediately switched her hands forward, he saw all that. Yeah.
He was clear. She was clearly lying about why she didn't want to go to the concert.
Yes, but exactly.
It was also, he's just very astute, I think.
Yeah.
So before I forget to say this, there's a couple of things I want to mention. I did see in a post I'm not looking at Twitter very much at all.
Yeah, I haven't touched Twitter.
Well, I did look at it enough because it showed up in one of my boxes, that the name change on Lady Susan was a mistake.
Oh,
they just made a mistake. This is what Paula Byrne said.
Aww.
That it was an oversight, a mistake. And so there's no story behind it. It was just simply a mistake.
Well, that's disappointing.
So what they need to do when they reissue the first series, because there's only one time that name is said, and that's not true, because Tom also I just can't believe they did that. It was such an oversight. And I guess when Paula found out, she was like, the Sanditon fans will catch this for sure.
I thought for sure there was going to be I get that if you've already filmed it all, but couldn't you have done one extra? I know it costs a lot of money, and it's easy for me to say, couldn't you have just filmed another scene where they say she got married or something? I know it would be an exorbitant amount of money, but it's disappointing that even when they caught it, they didn't even make an effort to fix it or anything.
Right. But it doesn't work with the rest of the story. We haven't seen the whole season, but I love the fact that Samuel comes over to her after the concert, So and introduces himself.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. The other thing was, let's see. Oh, that there was a note on my Amazon copy of the show that the Miss Greenhorn, the singer, was inspired by American soprano Elizabeth Taylor Greenfield.
Oh,
so there was evidently that's what they believe it was inspired by.
Okay.
Which was cool. And they pointed out a goof that was but they didn't talk about Lady Del Clement, Lady Susan du Clement. No, they didn't talk about that. But they did talk about the fact that Georgiana's handwriting changed from one episode to another.
I noticed that from one, because all we see is her signature in episode 1, and then in episode 2 we see her writing her signature again, but we also see the letter. I didn't compare it to season 1 though.
Yeah, well,
is that what it's different? Is from season 1, or is it from episode 1? It's different.
It's said from the episode before is what it said.
Okay, yeah, because she wrote her L differently in episode, because I think someone pointed out in episode 1 she lowercased her L when she signed the document. But in episode 2, I was watching for that because I knew it was in the back of my head that someone had said, well, why is she putting a lowercase letter to her name? And then I watched and it was capital in episode 2.
Well, maybe but the thing you would have seen her sign in episode 1 was the inheritance paperwork.
Yep.
So, yeah, anyway, I thought those were interesting.
The other thing I wanted to point out about Edward, and one of the reasons why I'm mad that he's endearing me to him, is because he is genuinely nice to Miss Hankins.
Yeah.
And even though like he danced with her at the ball, and that's when she told him about Augusta, and he danced with her in season 2 because Edward prodded him to, but he's genuinely nice to her. And you could see that in when he is actually, this is the other thing that endeared me to him a little bit, because he did tell Reverend Hankins, I want to write it to put pen to paper. And he actually followed through, and he went within the church to put pen to paper. He was actually doing what he said he was going to do. And that's not his usual MO. I thought he was just going to go and try to win her some other way, but he actually did what he said he was going to do. And when Miss Hankins came in there, his words were kind to her. His demeanor was kind to her. And when she gave him, she said, she was talking about his paper or his poem. And it's funny that because Augusta said what she said about his poetry, and as he was writing, he was kind of mocking himself, saying mawkish and sentimental. And then Miss Hankins came in and said, maybe you're writing what you think you should be writing, right from the heart. And those are all things that Augusta pointed out.
Right.
Yet
right.
he did not present her a poem because he could not write from the heart.
Yeah.
But he took, and I think that he actually listened to what Miss Hankins said, and he saw that she was right about it. That's why his poetry was stunk. So he values Miss Hankins' opinion. He values what she has to say, and he couldn't go through with it because it was just going to be crap because he wouldn't write from the heart. And so that was the other reason that he was endearing himself to me, was just how he treats Miss Hankins is kind.
And she is such a wonderful person.
I love her.
I like her even more. I'm so glad that she has this thing going with Dr. Fuchs.
Yes. And that is why her brother makes me so upset, because we see an episode when we talked about this where he wouldn't let Dr. Fuchs refresh her drink. He didn't want her talking to him. He didn't want her spending time with him. And it's all because Dr. Fuchs wanted some credit for Edward's turnaround. And Reverend Hankins is so prideful that he refuses to give any credit to Dr. Fuchs. And he's masking it as, it's because you don't have respect for the word of God. No, it's because he doesn't have respect for you and your shenanigans. So he's almost punishing his sister. And even when he sat down next to her to read, the fact that she had to lie or stretch the truth, that only she didn't outright lie, but she did stretch the truth. The fact that she felt she had to do that to hide it from her brother because she knew that he would not allow it was very sad to me, because Beatrice has been a great sister to him. She has been kind. She has kept his house. She has been essentially his wife in the parish. And he doesn't have any respect for her. He treats her like she doesn't deserve to make her own opinions. And her reaction when Dr. Fuchs said, I cannot wait to share it with you, was almost heartbreaking, because you know that she's not going to be able to tell her brother this at all.
Not initially, at least.
No. So
until he gets worse, probably. Yeah, it's, he may be worried that if she gets involved with somebody, then he loses all of his help.
I think that's part of it. And I think the other part is genuinely that he doesn't like Dr. Fuchs because Dr. Fuchs doesn't give him praise and honor.
It's science versus religion, right?
But he's not that religious.
No, it's what he stands for, though.
Yes. I think it's a bruise to his pride and to his ego that he's more upset about.
So, you want to know why I called it New Allies? Or did I tell you that?
You did not. I didn't even know New Allies was your title.
My title is New Allies. Okay. And the new allies are Arthur and Lord Harry. I call him Lord Harry. Montrose,
Yes.
And it's so great how Arthur was struggling with what was he going to do. This wonderful singer was coming to town, and now it turns out to be under false pretenses, not that was intended. And Harry encourages him, even though Arthur doesn't want to hear it. And he steps up and tries to, welcome Miss Greenhorn as well.
Mm-hmm.
And he, then he really speaks up for Arthur when he says he couldn't lie to you, which is, it's great to see that.
Yeah. Someone sees who he is.
Right. New allies there. And I think that will continue. And it's so funny when it starts. I mean, Harry is like, have I done something to offend you? And Arthur's like, I haven't given you any thought, Well, it's because he's worried about how he's treating Georgiana.
Mm-hmm.
We know that. But Georgiana knows things that Arthur doesn't know, which, anyway.
Yeah.
And then Georgiana and Samuel, are going to form a strong team, I think, for her defense. And what a great thing that I thought it was a great way to introduce him to Sanditon was to have him come in to rescue Georgiana, rescue in the sense of be her defense in the court. And so they are going to London. Do you remember that at the end of the episode?
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to go to London. And then obviously Miss Hankins and Dr. Fuchs, which really started the episode before.
Yep.
Which is, I think, just charming.
Mm-hmm.
And Lady D and Rolly Price, how they came to be allies. Do you want to talk about that for a minute?
Yeah.
For when she finds out who he is, that she's like, you're not taking a penny from that man, not a farthing. And then so he and Tom are looking at the town map, trying to figure out where to put the hotel. And this is going to really create a conflict with Tom and Mary about where to build the hotel. It's because he asked her, if he hadn't asked her opinion, it maybe wouldn't be as big a deal. Although,
I think it would have still.
Yeah, I do too. But she asked her opinion, and she says, you should put it up on this hill, wonderful views. And then, of course, instead of disagreeing with her, Rowley Price says, oh, what a great idea,
Why didn't we think of this?
Yeah, exactly. And then as soon as she walks out, he's like, oh, no, we can't build it there. And Tom's like, why? He says, too long a trek, which is true for a beach town. Don't want these guests to be walking all the way down the hill and into down to the beach. In this day and age, we would do that, but not then.
Yeah.
And so and then he's like, well, when he's telling Mary about it, he's like, well, it's a moot point because Lady D will not agree. And he had said the same thing to Rowley Price, who then says,
challenge accepted.
Challenge. Yeah. And he goes off to meet with her, and he gives her the opportunity to tell him what he had done that was so awful to her. Although he claims that isn't the case when they're sitting there. And I love the way that he says, okay, I'll build this somewhere else, my grand hotel somewhere else. And he's like, no, you won't.
Yeah. It shows that he knows exactly who she is, because he knew how to speak to her. Because we see later in the episode, towards the end, when he says showing up on that rainy day was the biggest mistake of my life. So he obviously knows he was the one who didn't show up on that rainy day. It wasn't a sunny day where she didn't show up, but he knew that if he said that to her, it would make her second guess enough to take control of the situation.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
And he even says, you were, how did he word it? You were a young, old, stubborn woman. She said, yes. Well, now I'm an old, stubborn woman, or something along those lines.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And yeah, it's so great. And then they become allies. And of course, she wants it on the seafront too.
Knocking down the fishermen's houses.
Yeah, which is the part that Mary will hate. So they're going to have to do something to compensate them, I guess. I
don't think Tom's going to go through with it.
I don't know. We don't know.
It's because stupid Twitter. I have a reason why I believe that.
Okay, so don't tell me.
I'm not, but I'm mad that I know it.
I haven't seen that, so let's not talk about it.
No, but I do. Even before that, because in season 1 and 2, Tom really did defer to Mary in those times of trouble. When he would really get overwhelmed and over his head, it was Mary in the end that he would always come back to and listen to her and her advice. And Mary would smack sense into the other people. Because when Mary is passionate about something, when she really thinks so, and I think they're drawing us there because episode 1 and even episode 2, when she talks to Price, she says, I'm going to Old Town again. They're really pulling that in. So she's going to fight for these people. And what she says to Tom is, well, we can't take down those villages. Surely you told him we can't build it there. And that's when Tom says, well, yes, I did, but it's moot. So she is going to fight for this. And when Mary is passionate about something, it's usually in someone else who is being wronged unfairly. Right. She is going to speak up and she's going to be firm about it, like she was with Lady Denham in season 1.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens.
And there was that, when we were going through our episode, we were going over all the synopsises for the episodes. Wasn't there one where it said that Mary and Tom were at odds with what to do, where to build their hotel? There was one of the episodes.
Yeah, you could be right. Yeah.
So I think that Mary is really going to fight.
Well, entirely possible. So,
but Riley and Lady Denham, they show up arm in arm, and I think Tom
concert,
Tom is still a little confused. Like, okay, they're clearly made up, Tom. you shouldn't be that confused. They showed up arm in arm, smiling and talking to you together. But then it was during this song that made everybody emotional and weepy when Rowley looked at Lady Denham and said, not showing up on that rainy day was the biggest mistake of my life. Because at one point, didn't Lady Denham say to him that it was for the best that she didn't show up? It was her.
Yeah.
It was when they were in her drawing room and she said that was the greatest thing for her was to not show up. And then he said to her, the worst thing I ever did was not show up.
Yeah, so, she said, what comes to mind, and this is not the exact words, but what she said was something along the lines that she dodged a bullet, but it wasn't that wasn't the word. That's way too modern a saying. But anyway, it's the same thing. Maybe that was the best thing that ever happened, is that he didn't show up.
And he said the exact opposite.
And back to that thing about them not getting Lady Susan's last name right, is like, excuse me, Raleigh Price was mentioned one time in the entire show in series 1, and you managed to get his name right.
Yep.
I mean,
Lady Susan was actually it's not even just that her name was mentioned. She was actually a person who showed up on the screen.
Right. That's right. Yeah. She wasn't just mentioned.
I'm really disappointed in that.
Yeah, I know. Me too. I don't know. I guess it's what happens when you're writing so fast and you got different writers writing it. But why couldn't somebody have checked that? In fact, what I posted on Twitter was they should have hired the Sanditon Sisterhood to make sure the continuity was right, or Maureen and I would have been happy to do it.
Yes, exactly. What they need is a literary historian, they need an actual historian, and then they need script historians. We will check them against the old scripts. That's what they need to do. When there's 2 years between filming, we need to have that. That really makes me sad because I was really hoping that, I don't know. I just, this team puts out such good things, and this team has worked so tirelessly for this fandom that we could get what we want.
Yeah.
That I have such high expectations for everything that they do. They're human. They made a mistake, but I have expectations for them being perfect.
Yeah.
It's their fault for putting out good work that I expect them to be perfect.
Yeah.
You want me to think you're perfect and stop doing such good work. I mean, that's on you. So the other thing, let's dig into Lady Susan a little bit. When they were at the tea, right, and you see her sitting by herself drinking tea, Lady Montrose, I don't like her. She was being so gossipy and so rude, and you could see on both Lydia and Harry's face that they were disgusted with how she was speaking. They were disgusted in how she was just about the gossip, and Lady Susan was within earshot and she's saying these cruel, mean things. The look of concern that came on Harry's face endeared me even more to him. And Lydia also looked like she was concerned.
Oh, yeah. And I also love, you want to get into Lady Susan, but I want to back up just a minute to Lydia. When they went out to go riding, and then Colburn wasn't there, Alexander wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, her reaction was so much more favorable, and her reaction to Leo and Augusta, I like her.
Yeah. And I mean, you would think that Lady Montrose would think about this a little more, that maybe the way to get to a widower, if you want him to marry your daughter, is to be nice to his children. I mean, I don't think that's why Lydia is being nice. I think Lydia is being nice because she genuinely enjoys people and she's genuinely a nice person. Lady Montrose showed her true colors there, where she was disgusted that that Augusta and Leo even came up to the carriage. She was completely disgusted by their mere presence, and ended with, "Don't encourage them, drive on." I don't like her, and her kids don't like her. And there was that scene where they were in the drawing room, wherever they're staying, and she says, Lady Montrose is talking about how Lydia's doing her job by getting Colburn interested. Harry should be doing his job by finding someone other than Miss Lamb in case there is a scandal. And Lydia says to her mom, "Well, it's because of all the things you taught us that we are the way that we are." And her mother says, "I can never tell, Lydia, if you were insulting me or congratulating me."
Yeah.
She's insulting you.
Yeah, she is.
You suck as a human being.
And I love the way Harry's like, "I think I'll go visit Miss Lamb."
Mm-hmm. And you know that because of who we've seen of Harry, what we've seen of Harry so far, that he's not going to abandon Georgiana in this. And not just because she's his beard, but because what she's doing for him is a very kind and compassionate thing. And just because she was kind and compassionate, he will return that favor over and over and over again. Because now he values her as a human being because he sees how kind and generous she is.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's why he values Arthur at first.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. But back to that scene at the tea house where they're having tea, that Lady Montrose is so mean, and we like Lady Susan so much, it hurts even more.
Mm-hmm, yes. And she has no right to even be that way. I mean, her husband has gambled away their fortune. That's a pretty dark mark on your family. That you have the audacity to insult someone who, A, is higher in society than you, B, has more money than you currently, and you're ripping on her because the king found a new favorite and you're acting like you're high and mighty. You're broke. By your own words, you don't even have a guinea. And you are
broke and scandalous.
Yes. And you're alienating this woman who's been nothing but kind and generous, even when you're offensive to her face.
Yeah.
She's kind to you. And you can turn your back on her. It just shows the kind of human she is. And that's when Arthur comes up in there. And I think that's the moment that Lady Susan realizes that the rumors are more than rumors. Because Arthur says, "Isn't it devastating?" And she says,
"What?" we don't know for sure if they heard it or not, but the look on her face would have told them everything.
Yeah. And I'm not sure they did, because you could see Harry, and of course I'm not there. So this is conjecture, but you could see Harry just looks more concerned as he's just watching them. And that's when she says, I'm afraid, Mr. Parker, I no longer have the king's ear in this regard.
Right.
I'm truly sorry for you. And then gets up in defeat and despair and leaves. Because it is not that she was just a plaything and she enjoyed being his plaything. She genuinely cared for the king. This relationship was long-standing, and she had genuine love and affection for him.
And also, she didn't know. That's how she found out.
I think she heard the gossip, but I think the way Lady Susan is it's just gossip. I know who I stand. I know who I'm with, and I know what my relationship is. And that was the moment that she realized that he had really turned her aside.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was sad.
It was very sad.
That was when Arthur walked away, and we see Harry come up to him and be like, I love how he talked about the American actress. She's American. We'll satisfy her with pomp.
Yeah.
Boy, does he get the American spirit.
and then that outfit he shows up with.
The look on Arthur's face when he showed up in that.
Yeah, that was really funny.
Arthur ushered that singer out of there so fast, and then he just looked like he had no idea what to do with himself as he walked away from the dude. And then, I love when she showed up, Arthur bowed to her, and she's like, you don't have to bow to me, Mr. Parker. I'm not royalty. But he also bowed to her when he showed her the truth, because he's showing her, this is who I think has real value. And I love that about Parker's personality, about Arthur's personality. Back to Lady Susan. Let's that scene where she shows up again. I think the next time we see her is at the concert, right?
Right. Yep.
And so
we saw her at the very beginning when Arthur was asking her if they should enter with bagpipes, and she obviously has this very expressionless face, look on her face, and he's like, "You don't like bagpipes? Well, I do, but
yeah."
The king doesn't.
Yeah.
Oh, then violin. We'll have violin,
That will be perfect. And so even though she's going through this revelation and she's in pain and she's sad, Charlotte comes over to her and they're talking, and Susan says, well, that's how men are. They get older and they find someone younger who will make them feel better about themselves. But then she digs into Charlotte and says, why are you still here?
Well, that's after Charlotte. She says that after Charlotte says to her that I really hope you find somebody who treats you with respect and that loves you. And that's when she says to Charlotte, and what like you, is this love you're having? I mean, it was, and of course the whole episode starts with this letter that we hear Ralph reading that he's written to really mushy letter.
I don't know. Clearly they've had some conversation, because Charlotte has had some time to tell him about how terrible and cruel Mr. Colburn is. So there is some level of conversation they've had about her time there. Clearly nothing of real substance, because he doesn't know anything about her. And I realized, as we were talking about episode 1, what we didn't discuss is one thing Ralph said to Lady Susan specifically is, Charlotte seems so altered here. And Lady Susan says, is that for better or worse? And he says, it's not for me to say. So he really doesn't know her well. So for him to effuse poetic on her and all these loving emotions and all these things, it feels more like he's speaking about him. Obviously, he's concerned with how he feels, and he just wants to kind of get Charlotte to a point where she'll confess that for him.
Yeah, he's projecting. You're right. He doesn't really know her, but he doesn't know. Yeah, he knows one side of her. That's it. Yeah.
And even that is kind of little.
Right. No,
she likes to read. So he did some nice things in episode 1 in the beginning, but by the ball in episode 1, it was like, oh, okay, I don't know that I like you. And then we see this letter that just feels so completely out of sync with even how they acted with each other. Of course, Ralph thinks he's marrying for love because he is in love with her, but he's in love with this image he's created of her.
That he's had since he was a child.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, it's really about the childhood version of her.
Mm-hmm.
The innocent, haven't ever left Willenden, haven't experienced anything. He doesn't know her as a experienced adult. I mean, experienced in a little bit of life.
Exactly. And I think that it's interesting that Lady Susan was able to, in her pain, just like Charlotte has done in the past, when she's been in pain, she's poured into someone else. So Lady Susan was in pain and called out some things in Charlotte where she said, and I'm going to paraphrase hugely here, but she said essentially, you're staying here for Georgiana to avoid going back home to Willingdon because you know
Are
he
you
doesn't
sure
make you
you're
happy.
not? Yeah. You have to think about this,
Mhm.
definitely. And so the other thing we see after the concert is when Samuel comes over to reach out to Lady Susan, and that's another ally, I think, that is going to be strong. Samuel and Lady Susan are going to work
watches
together.
her through the whole concert too.
Oh yeah, yeah, and are going to work together to get Xander and Charlotte back together. That, I mean, they may be allies and friends otherwise, which I think they will, but I think they will be allies in that effort.
Yes, I think they're going to be a match by the end of the season.
Yeah, which would be fine with me.
And they fit,
I mean,
they fit well, don't you think? They both have the same joy about life. They don't take things too seriously, except for when they need to. And they both are watchers of people. And that's what he says to her. She says to him, I'm sure you've come over here to hear the gossip confirmed. And he says,
right,
don't pay attention to that. I'd rather make my own opinions about people. So they have the same, they
moved in the same circles.
Yes. And they have the same outlook on life, where it's, no, I don't read anybody based off what anybody else tells me about them. I'm going to go in and find out for myself. It's why Lady Susan was so willing to befriend Charlotte, because she didn't care where her position was. She saw a girl who she thought was a genuine human being. And that's how Samuel is. Speaking of that, when he appears, let's talk a little bit about when he appears in the drawing room of, do you think they went to Trafalgar House or were they at Georgiana's apartment?
I think they're in Trafalgar House.
Yeah.
I don't know. Right. It could be Georgiana's apartment. It could be. I don't know.
Trafalgar House has changed, so it has.
It's gotten bigger
though. Yes.
Because, I mean, I would think it would be Trafalgar House because I don't know that. I don't know that Xander would know Georgiana's apartment,
or even feel comfortable showing up at her apartment.
Right. Whereas showing up at Trafalgar House, he's done before. So
yeah. But Alexander overhears Charlotte and Georgiana talking about this at the tea. And I love that scene when he gets back to the house and he's rushing about with determination, and his voice is strong and it's firm, and he's grabbing things.
Single-mindedness.
Yes. And obviously Mrs. Wheatley is concerned and Augusta is confused, but Augusta doesn't seem bothered. She just seems confused. Like,
what's going on? Yeah.
This is weird. But when he sees Xander immediately sees him in London and immediately picks up on him. And Xander wastes no time. It's like, let's just go. We're going to go back right now. So when he appears in this drawing room, Samuel is all smiles, as if you guys should just be thankful I'm here, right? You know who I am. You know what this is. But the look on Xander's face as he talks almost exclusively to Charlotte, and Samuel says to Georgiana, if I take your case, it's because I believe you can and I believe you will win.
Right.
In the end, he tells Charlotte, convince her to let me be her lawyer. So he does believe she can win.
Right. And then so Georgiana says, so prove it to me. Show me what you can do.
That was a hard scene.
They go to Herrick Park at 3 p.m, and he drills her just like what's going to happen in a courtroom. And she's ready to give up. She can't take it. Her ego, her pride is just like, can't deal with it. And so the whole time, Charlotte's trying to convince her, you've got to do this. And then I love that one of the outcomes of that wonderful concert was that Georgiana got re-inspired to continue her fight.
Yeah.
And so she's gonna, if this woman can come and sing for us with no king, take a Black woman who is touring the continent, and then I can do this.
Yes, absolutely. And I love just going, I wish I remember her name. Is it Miss Greenwood?
Greenhorn.
How she speaks to Arthur and how she speaks to the Duke. And Arthur is obviously very, very passionate when he says, I will pay you even though I know you won't be singing. And she says, well, you will be out quite a bit of money if I don't sing. Is that correct? And Arthur nods his head and she says, well, then it would be churlish for me not to perform. And what she's saying at the end, when she says, I wholeheartedly accept the king's apology, and she's looking right at Arthur when she says that, she's saying, I accept what you're saying. I'm doing this for you. And I just thought, oh, this woman who just shows up for a day is the first person really to see who Arthur is and to respect him and to honor him in the way that he deserves to be honored. Because Arthur, he wasn't just sad that the king wasn't showing up and he was going to lose money. He was also sad for what that would mean to this singer who is beautiful and who has this amazing talent and who travels worldly. And even when Lord Harry says, I am more, how does he word it? He says something like, I am more familiar with the lie than Mr. Parker is. And she says, that I believe.
Yeah.
So she's just willing to do this for him. And I think that kind of gumption is what Georgiana really needed to see. She really needed to see someone who, yes, I may not be performing for the person I thought I was going to perform for. This did not look the way I thought it was going to look, but I'm still going to be me, and I'm still going to show you how amazing I am, even though it didn't look the way I thought it was going to look.
And the, the fact that she was a woman who inspired another woman, a Black woman who was in a bad position, anyway. Yeah. And it was great how well Arthur treated her in terms of flowers and a maid to help her dress and, all of that stuff.
Bowing to her again.
I have to point out one little thing before we finish that part. And that is that we were totally wrong about the party continuing. I'd said at the end of the last episode, well, the party's going to continue. So there must be another party where they set off fireworks. Maybe when she wins the case, let's hope. Anyway.
Oh, I forgot about the fireworks. That was in some of the trailers, wasn't that?
Yep.
I forgot all about that. I was wondering why you said it was going to continue, but I've totally forgot about the fireworks.
Yeah.
Maybe at a wedding or something.
or
when she wins. You're right.
When she wins or something like that. Who knows?
Yeah.
So the other things that were other people that were inspired by Miss Greenhorn's performance were Samuel. We talked about that, reaching out to Lady Susan, Georgiana continuing her fight, and the other one is that scene that there'd been little previews of, but we didn't know whose hands it were, and it was Alexander and Charlotte's hands touching, although hers is gloved.
Well, let's go back to when they go to Hayrick Park, right? And Alexander says, I'll wait with you, because Samuel asks her to stay outside the room.
Right.
And they talk, and he even says, she asks how his time in Bath was. Pleasant enough. How was your return to Willingdon? Pleasant enough. Just pleasant. Then she realized what she said, so it's more than pleasant. And then he asked her about Ralph, and he asked her about her not returning to Willingdon, and she said, I'm here for Georgiana. He had to return to the farm. And Alexander says, oh, so he's a farmer, just like me.
Nothing like you.
He's nothing like you. And that could be taken one of two ways. I thought at first that Alexander might have been a little offended by that line, but it could also mean that he doesn't measure up to you. So,
well, I think it's just a difference between a farmer who has to get their hands dirty in the farming, or a farmer that owns an estate that is farmed.
Yes.
Which is totally different.
Yeah. But I think that because you could tell the whole time they weren't really talking about what they were talking about.
Oh no.
So I think that she was saying he doesn't measure up to you. Because he says something.
He could take it
what?
that way. At least he could take it that way.
Yeah. And I think she was kind of meaning it that way on some level, but it could also mean, no, he's not going to hurt me the way you hurt me. It could have been how she mentioned it too. But when he talks about Leo and Augusta, he says that they miss you terribly. And she says, do they? Or something along those lines. And he says, absolutely. And they have a stare down. So clearly they're talking about each other and not the things that they're actually saying. No. And then I think it's interesting that she drops her glove and he picks it up and hands it to her. And even though their skin isn't touching, they both hold on to the glove for a little longer than is necessary. And then at the end, we see her gloved hand touching his hand at the concert. So that was just kind of nice that they drew your eye that way to what's coming up and how they're feeling about each other. They're clearly in love. They seek each other's eyes out whenever they're in company of each other. And even them sitting next to each other, they were drawn to each other. Neither one of them meant to sit next to the other one. It was just, they both picked a seat. And
it almost looked like, oh, we've got to sit down, the concert's starting. Musical chairs, I mean,
yes. They both had to fight staring at each other the whole time. And that hand came out the moment the music ended. Charlotte shot out of that seat and started clapping. Xander was a little more stunned. It took him a few more minutes to get up there, but I think this is going to be him realizing. I do think there's going to be something with Lydia still.
Yeah.
But I think that he's
and Samuel.
Yes.
We know from that line that's in the previews that Samuel says, but she's not married yet.
Yeah. And I'm curious because I do feel like there is going to be something with Lydia, but I think you and I are in agreement that Lydia is going to essentially either help or back down because it's not me he wants kind of thing. But she does say, Lady Montrose does say, we forgive you for being absent today, as long as it comes with the assurance that it will happen again. And he says, certainly, and then looks over at Miss Haywood.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, I don't know, Lydia's I think it's, Lydia's presence is it's going to cause more misunderstanding with the two of them before they get back together.
I think it could even be that Lydia is simply befriending him because she's going to realize he's not in love with her, doesn't want her, because I feel like Lydia I really want to know about that other engagement that she had or that other match she made, because I feel like she's the type of person who will not go for someone unless it's a love match. And if she realizes his heart is somewhere else, she's not going to pursue him in that way. But I think that she might befriend him, and that's going to confuse Charlotte, especially since Charlotte is engaged to somebody else. I think that could be where it goes too. But certainly Samuel and Lady Susan are going to work together to get them together. I think that they are going to become a match. I think that we're seeing more signs that Arthur and Harry are going to have some sort of relationship, because Harry and him even talk at the gazebo, and he says, see, everything turned out well. And Arthur says, I certainly didn't think, there was a time where I didn't think it was going to. And they smile at each other. He tells him to call him Arthur instead of Mr. Parker. So they're forming an attachment. Lady Susan and Samuel are forming an attachment. Georgiana is fighting for herself. I cannot wait to see how Otis plays into this. I cannot wait.
Yeah. Yep. Well, it's going to be exciting.
Is there anything else that
I think we've covered it pretty well.
Yeah, I'm wondering what I'm trying to figure out the end. So Rowley, Price, and Lady Denham they're forming an attachment again very quickly.
Yeah, these are these allies, new allies.
We're already halfway through. This is so sad.
We're not quite halfway.
So
we're a third of the way.
Yes. So next week, it looks like we're going to get the hunting party next week. It looks like we are going to see the start of Samuel and Susan giving them a push or encouragement. We're going to see the courthouse in London. But we also can see that Charlotte will at least be back for some of the hunting season or hunting party, because Lydia tells her that her mother is set on Lydia and Colburn being a match. And I think those are the biggest things from the preview that we can take away. Although it does end with it appears like Colburn is going up to Miss Haywood, Charlotte, on the hilltop, and he says Miss Haywood, but he's got like that flowing cloak and the no necktie thing. So feel like that's set up for something.
We just don't know what.
Every Jane Austen piece I've ever watched, something big happens when the man doesn't have a necktie on and he comes across the woman he loves.
Well, and I was just going to say the other thing I meant to say was when the Colburns show up, when he goes and gets his brother and they show up, it really reminded me of the rescues that happened in so many of Jane Austen's.
Yes.
The Mr. Darcy and Colonel, what's his name? Brandon, thank you. That's exactly what it reminded me of when they came in.
Absolutely. I think that Colburn is more a Mr. Darcy than Sydney was, and I think that's why I like him so much.
He is definitely more Mr. Darcy.
And Mr. Darcy is like my ideal of any book I've ever read, any story I've ever heard. Like it's always been Mr. Darcy since I was in like the 6th grade. So,
and how's your husband feel about that?
I was going to write about Mr. Darcy in my vows, and he begged me not to. I didn't.
I think that was probably a smart move not to.
But he knows that he's on par with Mr. Darcy. So, but the other
especially thing after what you've been through in the last couple of years.
Exactly. Man. I actually had a hankering today to like turn on Pride and Prejudice and pick up it's about that time of year when I'm like, I should read Pride and Prejudice again. It happens every year at this time. So I had that inkling today for the first time this year. But the other thing we didn't talk about, it's a real quick scene, but I think it shows a lot of things. It's when Samuel is standing outside Hayrick Park when they come back, and Leo comes out to meet him with the sword. And she says, do we know you? And he says, no, but I know you. You must be Colonel. What does he call her? Colonel Colburn?
Yeah.
And she says, it's Major Colburn to you. Ooh, Major. He says, I'm your infamous Uncle Samuel. And she says, what's infamous? It's like famous, only better. And then he walks away. And I think that right there, the way he smiles so easily, the way he plays along with them, and he even raises hands up in surrender, that alone has made him someone that Leo and Augusta will fight for.
Yeah.
He just fits so well into the family. And he even says, Alexander says to him, I assume you'll be going now if Georgiana doesn't hire you. And he says, well, why? Sanditon has changed for the better. Why don't I stay a while? So a lot of good things are going to come out of him, I think.
Yep, me too.
So that's
we know they have that race on the beach. That'll be fun.
Yeah, I can't wait to see that. There's so many pieces that we've been teased with and shown that I know they're coming somewhere. And I'm actually kind of glad I don't know where, because every week I'm like, oh, is this going to be that scene? Is that scene going to come up? And I'm excited every time I turn it on. So I think it's good. Next week is going to be really good. I think we're going to get a lot of good scenes next week. Tune into our Sanditon Facebook group. It's the Sanditon Chronicles, Sanditon Family Fan Club. Remember that we do have to approve posts, and we are not approving any post that does not say spoiler across the top, because we have several countries watching this. And so they aren't able to see it all. So on every post after Tuesday, you need to write spoilers on the top for whatever episode or whatever season. And we have a 36 spoiler ban, so 36-hour spoiler ban from Sunday until Tuesday at 9 a.m. We will not be releasing any posts at all that talk about the current episode. So remember that. We have a spoiler thread where if you need to get it all out of your system, you can talk in the spoiler thread. And then make sure that you are subscribing to our podcast on YouTube and on all of our podcasting platforms, and share it with your family and friends. We'd love to hear from you. Janice and I would love to hear what you would like to say. If you want to come on and chat with us, we'd love to do that too. We like people and we like this fandom. So we'd love to hear from you. And on that note, we will see you next Friday for a recap of episode 3. Bye, guys.
Thanks. Bye.
Are you craving more TSC content? Head on over to our social media accounts. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and our Facebook group, the Sanditon Chronicles, Sanditon Family Fan Club. Also, check out our website, thesanditonchronicles.com. Of course, we want to hear from you. We want to know what you want to hear and what your thoughts are. Email us at the.sanditonchronicles@gmail.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Tune in every week for new episodes.